Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Eleanor and this is going to be my video talking about the best books or my favourite books that I read in 2021. I read 64 books in 2021, which I am equally really proud of and a little bit gutted because up until June I was really on track to being able to perhaps read 100 books in 2021, which I have never done before. Really on track for that, and then I got COVID and then I never really read as much again in the latter half of the year. But I actually still managed to read my yearly goal of 52 books, which I'm immensely proud of regardless. I had a wee push in December to read a last few books to kind of tie up my reading year. So this is going to be a quick video about some of my favourites and highlights of the year. When I look at all the books I read this year, in 2021 I should say, we're now in 2022, get with the times, Eleanor. I did read a lot of rereads, so when you take all of them out, there's perhaps not as many books to choose from as I would first hope. When I take a look at my reading as a whole for 2021, there was a lot of rereads, so when you take them out, I wasn't left with as many to choose from as I would have hoped. But I feel like I am very happy with the books here I've got to show you. And the ones that are part of a series, I'm holding up one of the books, but it's the whole series I'm talking about rather than just one individual book. Otherwise I will say that at the time. The first book I'm going to mention is actually part of a series, and I'm mentioning it first because I don't have physical copies of them, so I need to mention them so I don't forget. And that is the books in the Murderbot Diaries series by Martha Wells. There's like 6 of them now. They're novellas, except one of them is a full-length novel. I read all of them in 2021 and I thoroughly enjoyed them. They are an amazing sci-fi series with a character called Murderbot who is genderless because they're an android kind of construct, and their purpose was made to be a sec unit, so they're a security unit that is rented out to big corporations to help them fulfill a function when they're off planet and they're doing certain tasks. Sec unit hacked their governor module, so they have free will, but they still have to pretend to be following along with the rules. But you're in their head and their internal monologue is hilarious, and they just want to be watching space operas, soap operas, and doing nothing of the sort in terms of following rules. They think humans are really stupid and make lots of really dumb mistakes, and it's just a really great fun sci-fi series. If you are looking to get into sci-fi and don't know where to start, find sci-fi very daunting because some of the series can be huge and very long and hard to break into, or there's just so many different types of sci-fi. I think Murderbot would be a really good place for you to start because they're novellas, so they're quite short, and it's a bit comedy, and it's not too serious, but it's a fantastic story with great characters and lots of diverse representation as well. So I think that would be a really great place to start if you're looking for a kind of entry adult sci-fi series. I'll also leave linked in the description any individual reviews I've done for these books. I think most of them I have got an individual video for them because I love them so much, and that's what my channel is review videos. So I'll leave them down below if you're looking for more information or want to chat with people in the comments who've read the series and you want to find out more information. The next book I loved was Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant. If you have been on my channel even just a little bit this last year, you'll know my kind of new undying love for Myra Grant, who is also known as Sean Maguire. She's got a couple pseudonyms and is quite a vivacious writer across a few different genres. I read Into the Drowning Deep with Faye from Books and Chocoholic, and we loved this. I thought it was such a good book. It is horror, a kind of mystery thriller, and it's just very intense and really well written. You're following a cast of characters who they set off on a ship called the Atargus, and they are looking to find out what happened to a ship a few years previous that everyone ended up murdered by what they think is mermaids. And that's not a spoiler, that's how the book starts. You know that going in. So there's a family connection, and it's a film company that is funding this expedition again because the first trip that went out, it was to make a documentary about mermaids. So they send out this new group full of scientists and reporters and people investigating the Mariana Trench and deep sea, and they're looking to find out what happened to the previous ship and its crew and people aboard, and to find out real proof about the existence of mermaids. Obviously, it's a kind of horror and thriller. It's set out in the deep ocean and it's very intense. It's so gripping and it's a really brutal story as well. There's a lot of graphic violence in here if that's not something you can stomach. It's also very intense. I myself have a fear of deep sea and being like trapped and things like that. So I found it a very intense read, but I understand how I feel about my fears and I can still kind of read about it. But be wary if you have a fear of like deep sea and open ocean and being in those little, I can't remember what they are because it was quite a while ago since I read it, the little pods that are for one person and they go really, really, really deep into the ocean, and tiny, tiny little miniature submarines. They are very, very intense scenes to read if you have kind of a phobia around that. So be warned. But again, this is a great book in terms of its diversity in characters. There's a deaf character in here, so there's the use of sign language, which is fantastic to see in a book. You definitely don't see that very often. There's also a lot of diverse relationships as well, and some very interesting characters in here. I just love the point of view you're following, and I just think it's a really well done story. There's also a novella that I read in 2021 called Rolling in the Deep, and in this book, it comes first, you read this first, but in Rolling in the Deep it's the prequel and it is actually following the original ship that went out. So you read this first, so you know what's going to go down, you know what's going to happen, but you have so little information in this story about what happens in that first ship that it's so fun and interesting to see in Rolling in the Deep, their perspective, seeing and experiencing all from the first time. And yes, another very intense read, but it's a novella, so it's a very short one, and I thoroughly enjoyed that as well. So know that there's a novel and a prequel novella. The next book I thoroughly enjoyed in 2021 was Recursion by Blake Crouch. I believe in 2020 I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and I really, really enjoyed it. He writes science fiction in such an interesting way. It's such a mind-bendingly twisty book, and as much as I love Dark Matter, I loved Recursion even more because I feel like it takes it to the next level. It's more intense, it's more clever, it's more intricate, and if you love very mind twisty sci-fi where the technology is really advanced but it's kind of present day and you're kind of confused and don't know what's going on half the time, I know for some people that can really annoy them and it can put them off, but I love feeling confused in a story as long as it's purposeful and is intended by the author. If the author does it by accident, then that's bad writing. But if you're purposely kept in the dark and strung along and confused and puzzled and it's done so well and it's balanced really well, I absolutely love that, and it's a thing I really like in my science fiction. I know that's not for everyone, but I like weird books, so it works for me. So in Recursion, you're following a couple of characters, and it starts off with this like epidemic and this disease where people are getting like duplicate memories that are slightly altered, and it's driving people insane because it's like memories of a different life where things have changed. But it's happening out of nowhere and people think it's contagious. It's like an epidemic. So you're following this character who's a police officer, I believe, and it happens to people he knows around him and himself, and he starts kind of investigating what's going on. And the other point of view you're following is of a neuroscientist who is working with this technology, and you see these things unfold, but they're on different timelines. And then for the whole first half of the book, you feel like you know what's going on, and then it gets weird. It gets really, really weird, really intense. It is a wild ride, and when you get to like the halfway point, you can't put this book down because you need to know what's going on, you need to know what happens, and the ending is just like unlike anything you would expect going into the story and reading the first couple of chapters. You have no idea what's coming, and it's a wild ride. And if you like your standalone science fiction books that are really mind twisty and clever and intricate, this is definitely a book you should check out. Even after I've read it, I still think about it and it kind of lingers in my brain, and every now and again I ponder the possibilities, and that is when you know a book is written well and leaves an impact, is you're just kind of bubbling over with possibilities and thoughts. So yeah, I think that's all I'll say. This is a book you really don't want to know anything much about before going in, because part of the brilliance of it is watching it unfold through the character's eyes and trying to work out what's going on, because you're not going to guess. It is one of those books. The next books I loved in 2021 are the Four Treasures series by Carolyn Logan, the first book being The Stone of Destiny, and the next books being The Cauldron of Life and The Sword of Light. The fourth and final book is coming out at the end of 2022, and I'm really excited. Caroline Logan is a Scottish author. She lives up in the Cairngorms, and she has written such a fantastically immersive high fantasy young adult series. This book is about Scottish myth and folklore. They have like changelings and magic and mystical weapons and fae creatures, and this book, although not technically set in Scotland, everything about it feels Scottish. You feel like you're on there's a hidden portal somewhere in Scotland that leads to this world. It just has such a Scottish feel and a Scottish touch to it. If you're interested in feeling the atmosphere of Scotland and these characters who have Scottish ways of speaking and things like that, I don't know how to describe this. This is a very immersive high fantasy series, and it's so accessible and so easy to read. The characters are lovely and are just so brilliantly written. It's such a diverse cast of characters with very interconnected relationships. This is very much a found family story with amazing adventure sewn all the way through it. Each book you can't put down, and you're so eager to find out what is going to happen to these people and their relationships, and I just think it's so well done. The main point of view you're with is Elsa, who is this lovely young woman who's had a very hard life, and it's her journey of finding a found family, and through the other books you do kind of delve into other point of views and learn more about this world, and I just think it's so beautifully done. And in true high fantasy fashion, you've got to love a really beautiful map. So this is definitely a series I would highly encourage you to pick up. If you like high fantasy or young adult fantasy, this is definitely a series I think you should try. It's just so beautifully done. And again, I want to be shouting out Scottish authors here on my channel, and I think this is a fantastic series and you should definitely pick it up. Also, the illustrations of these covers are beautiful. What's not to love? The next book I loved in 2021, said that a lot this video, was The Marionettes by Katie Wismer, and this also includes the second book in the series, Wicked Souls. I'll leave that there. I absolutely love the covers. This skull speaks to me. This also feeds into my love for supernatural things, and this is also romance. Katie Wismer is a self-published author, and again, I think that's something that needs to be praised and shared, because self-published authors do all their own marketing as well, and I think that's a very difficult job and many hats to wear. So I will again shout from the hilltops that this is a series you should pick up if you love supernatural romance that is very adult. So it's kind of new adult kind of series. If you like graphic depictions of violence and sex, this is a series for you. The first book isn't too bad in terms of how much of that is depicted in the story, but the second book definitely ramps up, and the author has made it very clear that with each subsequent book it just gets more and more intense with the storyline and the plot. I don't particularly enjoy straight up romance books. I love a very intricate and detailed plot along with some romance sprinkled in if it's appropriate, and this is a series where I think that balance is done well. You know it's a self-published series, but I don't think that detracts from how great the writing is and how intricate the plot is, and I think that should be lauded because self-published authors do so many things for their books and don't have a whole massive team behind them like big publishing houses do. You're following the character of Valerie Darkmoor, who is a blood witch, and they are very rare. She attends this academy, going through training to try and become a marionette, which is an elite team of magic users or supernatural creatures that kind of protect and govern the magical world and monarchy. And this is a very interesting world because the supernatural beings are not hidden from society in some other series where they're underground and hidden and the humans have no idea. They live in harmony with the humans, but more like the humans are kind of subjugated to the supernatural. Which is a very interesting take and not one you see particularly often. And I really enjoy that balance and think it's very interesting, the characters. And in this first book, you're learning just tiny snippets of this world, but I can tell with each book the world is going to open up so much more. And what I also love and find infuriating is these books end on massive cliffhangers. So if you're not interested in waiting for the rest of the series to be published at the author's own writing schedule, then maybe you want to wait. But this first book was published only a couple of months before the second book, but we're going to have to wait a whole year for the third book. But Katie Wismer has said that she's hoping this series will be 5 books, or it could possibly be more. It depends how her creative juices for this series goes. But yes, this is another series that I absolutely loved in 2021, and yeah, it just again sparked me back to my roots. My real love and joy and passion for reading came in the early 2010s when I fell in love with all the usual suspects of the Vampire Diaries and Twilight and the House of Night series and the True Blood series. I found my true calling in supernatural books. So again, this is another one that I loved this year. Pivoting back again into science fiction, we have The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is the 4th and final book in Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series, and I loved it. And I'm so gutted that that's the last book in this series, because each book is very loosely connected, but it's more just about this interlinking world and all the interlinking alien species. Becky Chambers has a gift for writing alien species that are very unique and very detailed and complex and have such different and intricate cultures compared to humanity. And I love this book in particular, more so because out of all the other books, this is the only book where there's no human characters at all. Each character in this story is a totally different alien species, and at not one point do you feel like they are different from you. They are, but right down to it, people are people, and we all have the same general wants and feelings and ambitions in life. And I just think that was really beautiful. And at the very core of this series is interconnecting relationships. I always describe it as quiet, but I don't really know, maybe you can let me know in the comments how you would describe it. This is not a high impact, high action science fiction series. This is very much character driven. There is a plot. It's meandering and slow, but the plot is just there in the background. The plot's not the point. It is about the characters and their relationships with each other and how they communicate and get to know each other. Some of my favourite bits in this book where some characters are talking about humans and they just don't understand cheese, I think it is. They don't understand why we would voluntarily eat things that have been left out to mould. And I just think little tidbits like that are really funny to interweave in, and just to remind the reader that humans aren't the centre of the universe, and certainly in this series, they're not really that relevant. They're not the highest power in the galaxy, in this series in particular. And I just think if you're looking for an entryway into science fiction and you mostly love character-driven stories, this might be a great series as a start. The first book is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and yes, there is plot, but it's about the characters and the interconnecting relationships between these different species and cultures. I normally don't enjoy really character-driven stories. I love a plot. I thrive on a plot. I've put down many a book because there's not much going on and it's very slow and meandering and I'm like, get to the point. But I don't feel that way with this series because the different alien species and their different cultures and the unveiling of all these interconnectedness was so intriguing to me. That was kind of the plot and driving point for me, and that tied me in. So yes, I have rambled a lot and not said much at all about this series, but I absolutely loved it. I was gutted that this is the last book. Again, I said I'll leave all my individual reviews below if you're wanting more information, but this is me just wanting to gush about why I loved these books this past year. And the last book I wanted to highlight as a favourite from mine from 2021 was On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. This is an absolutely stunning graphic novel, and it's science fiction. The artwork is beautiful, the story is beautiful, and I just think it's phenomenal. If you love science fiction stories that again are kind of character driven, are very much about the relationships and found family, and you love beautiful graphic novels with artwork that is absolutely sublime, I would encourage you to check out this book. I obviously know that these big, heavy, printed graphic novels can be very expensive, but initially On a Sunbeam was published online for free, just as a kind of webcomic. So you can actually still find this on Tilly Walden's website to read for free if you would rather read it that way, instead of buying a physical copy. I got my copy secondhand, so it wasn't the exorbitant price it would have been initially. Something really clever about this book is that it's actually in 2 timelines, but the 2 timelines are depicted with 2 different colours. So in one timeline, it's the base note is this kind of purple, and in the other timeline, the base note is blue. And the illustrations are just beautiful. I'll try to find a couple more that aren't spoilery. The artwork is just stunning. The cover is beautiful. I just think it's a really, really lovely story. And again, with very diverse characters. There's a non-binary character in here. There's female-female relationships. And it's just lovely. I think that's all I'll say on that. As you can probably tell, I was very gung-ho on my science fiction in 2021, and I think this year I really honed in on what I love to read. I do like fantasy, I do enjoy it. I just don't enjoy it as much as I found that I love science fiction. I feel like that's more my focus, and I'm trying to hone in more about what I enjoy. And I think I've made a lot of more discoveries this year about being selective in what I'm reading, and I'll probably do a separate video about what my plans are for 2022. But in terms of things like finishing the Discworld series and things like that, I don't think I'm going to do it in completion the way I was originally intending, because so many of the books are just a bit meh for me, and there's so many books that I'd rather read instead. So I'm trying to be better about putting down books that I'm not gearing with, I'm not enjoying, and not just reading them for the sake of it, because life is too short. If I can only read 52 books a year, that's not that many books in comparison to how many are published every day. But I don't want to be rushing my reading, and I don't want to feel pressured. I just want to kind of go at my own pace and read what I love. So yes, so that is all the books I wanted to highlight as favourites of mine for 2021. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these, what your favourite book of 2021 was. I know I'm behind on watching everyone's booktube videos. I'm trying to catch up. I have just been on a different planet this last few months. 2022 is the year for me. I'm going to get back into the swing of things, sort my life out. But yeah, I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments. Let's talk about our favourite books of this last year. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon in another video. Bye.